Chapter 1041. Illusion. Gong Yi, who did not hesitate at this moment, still chose to find the man in black first, but found that no matter which direction he went, those little foxes were always around him. At this time, Gong Yi, when he squatted down and wanted to continue talking to them, they all dispersed and disappeared in front of him. As if he knew that escape from the earth, Gong Yi remembered that he had copied such a skill from Martial Tuchi's body before, and simply started it. But I found that this place doesn't support reading at all. It looks like an illusory place. No matter where I go, this place has never changed, it's just a difference in perspective. But at the same time, the little foxes disappeared, and the whole village fell silent like death, but the environment of this place with the sound of birds and flowers is indeed very pleasing to the eyes. At this time, the man in black suddenly appeared in front of Gong Yi, and then pointed to the road ahead. This is what Gong Yi did not expect at all. He just disappeared, and now he is back. Can it be said, just now, I was indirectly entering someone else's illusion, or indirectly into someone else's world? Otherwise, how should I solve the problem in front of me? He was able to speak clearly by himself, but the man in black motioned for him to move on, and Gong Yi just didn't speak any further. After a while, the man in black walked into a corner, and the strange light emitted from that place was the same as that emitted from the small hole in the cave just now. So he motioned himself to take a step forward, and from that, Gong Li looked inside. Gong Yi was not ambiguous, and when he looked on the internet, he found that everything seemed to exceed his budget, and what was revealed in that place was a strange light. But it was this ray of light that took Gong Yi's mind away. When he woke up again, he found himself in the scene. In the environment just now, those children were really there for themselves. Rotating, and his body also turned into a little fox. Like a person who belongs to him at once, and gradually at the beginning and not entering, but gradually become, later infected, so you just play with them so much. It wasn't until after a while that someone suddenly appeared at the gate of the village, and all the children gathered up curiously. Gong Yi was a little nervous when he saw this scene. Usually, this kind of plot seems to be a big villain. It came out, as expected. An inexplicable creature suddenly appeared at the gate of the village. After attracting all the children, it opened its bloody mouth and ate them. Gong Yi only had time to save 2 of them, so he told them to hurry up. Going home, 2 little foxes were crying. It disappeared in front of Gong Yi's eyes in one day, and only Gong Yi was left to face this huge monster alone, but that thing didn't seem to want to eat him, just to himself. After leaning over and smelling it, he left without any thought at all. This scene made Gong Yi very surprised. Since he came to this place to forage, how could he find the prey in front of him and not eat it? Just standing there waiting for the disappearance of the monster, waiting for him to leave, Gong Yi dared to walk into the village. At this time, the village chief who was standing at the entrance of the village couldn't help but glance at himself sharply. At this time Gong Yi, in fact, it's still quite frustrating. Because I am not a creature in this village, if it is true that some mistakes are found, there must be no way, but I have to say that the environment of this place is really good, if the huge danger outside is excluded. The rest is still okay. At this time, a woman ran from behind. She should be a fox after transformation. He quickly rushed up and grabbed Gong Yi's hand, thanking him desperately. Because I wanted to have a child just now, and the village chief only talked about it at this time. Many children have been eaten up because of such a scene. No matter how they teach this kind of experience, there will always be various kinds of experiences. The children who do not listen to persuasion to do such a thing, this time, the next 2 years of the cable will definitely be long-hearted. But in the same way, those won't come back, and there is no other way, only to mourn and change. Only then did Gong Yi know why their group is so large. It turned out to be a reaction to facing such a thing. At least the large population can guarantee that what is lost and what is made up will take care of each other. Chapter 1042. Rescue. I didn't expect you to save people. In this situation, it's better to run away as soon as possible. The one who survives is Okay, if you take the two of them and you can't escape, you should. Well, this time it's. Luckily for you, that monster didn't go into a starvation state. Otherwise, let alone a child, I am afraid that even my old bones can be eaten, and recently, the meeting in the village has been relatively lax. After you rescued them this time, what about that? Let's help explore the weakness of the monster below. After hearing this, Gong Yi didn't. I was a little flattered. He was just an outsider, but suddenly he was given a heavy responsibility. Such a situation is really rare, and this village chief is not like the first time I saw a place like myself, it was like the first time I saw myself. This scene made me a little surprised, but at this time, my body answered some words uncontrollably. It seemed that it was not because my body really used it. Not very good, even he will have his own thought, but also made Gong Yi think of another point. If everything is for a reason, then how can I solve the problem in front of me now? And this man in black does not have any malice, just brought himself to come. It's just such a place, but some of the things they do make it hard for them to understand. Just like this village chief, what he did was as if he had never seen him, but when she was talking to him, she had always had a tit-for-tat attitude towards herself. Moreover, this body is not as smooth as I missed it before, and even the other party can make his own question and answer when he looks at him. Does this control ability become weaker and weaker? If so, then Gong Yi suddenly understood why the village chief looked at him with hatred, because he and the people she hated should look alike, otherwise there is no explanation. At least from the point of view of this matter in front of me, there are not so many problems, but for myself I still hope that everything can develop to a suitable state, just like if I really repeat the face of that person. Then Gong Yi still doesn't mind apologizing for him. After all, this matter should also be the person's fault. After all, there is a reason why he deliberately sneaked into such a little fox's place. As expected, after staying in this body for a period of time, he found that this person did a lot of bad things behind his back, including selling out the little fox's house for his own personal gain. Gong Yi saw this scene. Even after hearing his voice, I was really angry. But he couldn't say anything, and he didn't even have the ability to stop what they were doing. It could be said that he was just a bystander living in this soul. If you want to do something in the world, it is simply heavenly. It's still difficult, and it can even be said that if you want to control this body and do it according to your own mind, it's just joking. But sometimes it also makes Gong Yi very sad. If everything can develop according to his own wishes, I am afraid things will not fall to the level they are today. But at the same time this man in black also suddenly appeared in front of him. He said some inexplicable things to himself, but it still made Gong Yi fresh in his memory. This is actually just a memory. If you can continue to read it. The body you always use was sealed by our department later, but in fact what he did is even more vicious than this world. He even made a mess of this village. Did you see that? The statue above it was built for him. What's trapped in it is his soul. As long as he never survives, we'll never do it for her change. But at this time, some of Gong Yi can't understand it. Could it be that if he doesn't live, he won't make any changes? If it is said that their little fox group is not suitable for living in this place, why not consider making some changes? At this time, the man in black once again switched the screen to the place Gong Yi had seen before. It must be said that it was a peaceful scene until the man in black, the one he controlled, appeared. Life just got worse. It got worse and worse, and there were even many children who kept disappearing. When the village chief asked, the man casually prevaricates a few words, but in fact, when Gong Yi shared his body with him, he saw some other scenes. He took the children out with his own hands, and then to some inexplicable people. Chapter 1043, Joy. Maybe it was because of the belief that those little foxes didn't even resist, they were taken away casually. The man was so happy to count the money in the back. This scene made Gong Yi difficult to understand. Maybe this is the gap between people. But now it seems that he can't save those. The little fox can help the man in black punish the man in front of him, but at this time the man in black shook his head and said that he was already dead, and what he saw now is only it was just a memory sealed by his soul. But the real him has not dissipated, just like the place above the village. That place was originally used to worship Matsuri and imprison him, and the one I saw before. It was caused by the man in black. The death of the little fox in one is not a real scene, but an illusory one. It can even be said that it is just a projected image, and the real thing has not happened yet. But if this is the case, who did Bobo spend 2 days in the village with? Is it with some shadows? But he himself doesn't know how these things came about. But if everything is an image, the new little fox who came a few days ago is spending every day with these images. Isn't there a strange time? At this time, the man in black smiled, and once again pointed to the sculpture in the center of the square. That thing is the final answer to the mystery. Everything is led by him. People who really step into this place will not think that all this is fake. After all, just like when you came here, you didn't think that. Are all the real corpses lying on the ground? The blood they shed is also one of the images left in the past, because that person came back here again to watch everything in this place, which led to all the things have developed to this point today. But at the same time there are some things that are like this. Regret is too late, it has already happened, so I hope you can help save it. At this time, Gong Yi was at a loss. He was just an ordinary person, and he didn't even have the ability of a little fox. What could he use to save them? It's hard to say that as long as he contributes his strength, all this can continue. It's impossible at all, and listening to what the man in black said, you should avoid that. The person formed by the sculpture, they should have disappeared without a trace by now, or even moved to another place. If Gong Yi follows him to a place to save those little foxes, then what should the rest of the pirates do? And he is still waiting for him in that cave, and there is another person on the boat. If the one on the boat, if there is no problem with people, then the people in the cave need to be rescued. And at this time, they were actually quite nervous, especially when Aruma was given a heavy responsibility for the first time, but found out that it was such a situation. If he could solve the matter well, then for Gong Yi, it's probably just, don't worry about yourself. But if you can't do anything, you can be forgiven. After all, this is how it is. When you put it in front of you, you can tell what a bad situation it developed. But also for myself, I can't give in because of such a situation. This is something that can't happen at all. And at this moment Gong Yi also discovered another point, if I guessed correctly. The man in black wanted to bring himself here is hoping to revive this person, which is the sculpture, but I have to say how someone like him can revive it himself. He's not a good person. He can't let himself stand up to everyone's scolding to do such a thing. And once he does such a thing, some things can be regarded as unbearable. But it also made Gong Yi unable to reject this person. After all, he actually moved out all the rest, including some special images, of course, the one he saw before, the death of the foxes. The scene, I have to say that it was really a frightening moment, and I didn't know how to face it. But it is precisely because of all this that I have to cheer myself up and overcome all difficulties. After all, there is no obstacle that cannot be overcome, only I am unwilling to overcome it. But at the same time, Aruma also asked for a moment. There are some special points about this place. But Bobo couldn't tell, and the village chief didn't want to pay attention to Aruma, which made Aruma feel extra embarrassed. But Lan Ying comforted her, but it didn't make her feel very embarrassed, but it's just lost. Chapter 1044, Concealing. You said that they didn't want us to know what was going on at all, so from the beginning to the present, they didn't intend to explain to themselves. At this time, Lan Ying patted Aruma on the shoulder, signaling him not to think too much, but now even Lan Ying has to pay attention to the situation, and the little fox has a very disgusting attitude towards them. It can be said that if it wasn't for a few people still in this place, guarding them, then the little fox should have the kind of extremely annoyed look directly expressed, not to say that they feel dissatisfied because of this situation. I just felt that it was a little unfair. After all, I was working hard for his so-called last line of defense in this place, and they faced it in such a state. It doesn't matter, but you really should talk to us. But if he doesn't say that, you can't force him, and he must be a little hard to tell. It will be better after a while." After hearing this, Aruma didn't say anything. Your famous mouth stood aside, waiting for the next step, but Gongyi never came back, and the one from Meyer didn't make any movement. 2 people. It was like being cut off by someone else, which made Aruma feel a little uncomfortable. If it's just with Bobo, it's easy to handle. It doesn't matter if there is one more, but now I'm staying with Lanying and a bunch of little foxes, and this feeling suddenly sprouted. And there is no way to ignore this responsibility. After all, before leaving, Gongyi specially warned himself. It is impossible for Aruma, as a member of the pirate group, to not help at this time, although Lanying can fight wet, but that's not a reason to do that right now. After all, and in this situation, one of the things that gave me a headache was the man in black outside the hole had to say that the sound of his footsteps was always there. This place was wandering. If you can ignore it, of course it is a good thing, but now it seems that you can't move forward or retreat, and the village chief is reluctant to tell himself about this matter, but Aruma still remembers it with Gongyi. The one that arrived. The sculpture. If the problem starts from that place, that's excusable, but why can't she consider revealing something to herself? But at the same time, Aruma discovers a surprising thing. Lanying is actually with the little fox chatted. It was a man who spent money and looked like he wasn't very sane, but he and Lanying talked about it in a few words. Useful information. At this time, I took those. Eat the leftovers, and ran back to see Aruma with the hard stuff, and raise the spoils in his hands. I have to say that he is indeed a person suitable for communicating with others, but it is different for Aruma. She may be more inclined to abduct people, or take people away directly. But at the same time, it also makes it hard for me to imagine that there is indeed a problem with the sculptures in this place, but I didn't think about it. All the so-called village chiefs are fantasy, and this is what Gongyi told himself after returning. He said just now that there are many things worth seeing around this place. He said that he would take us there after the matter was settled in a while, and the village chief had already agreed. After hearing this, Aruma couldn't help but be surprised. They all stayed in this place. Why didn't they know such a thing at all? Or they have already done it from the beginning to the present. After all the preparations, she was just hiding it from herself. After Aruma had such an idea, she looked at all the little foxes around and found that they were all standing there with such expressions, although it was not a kind of indifference. But it was indifference. Are you sure you're only chatting with him? You look at the faces of the little foxes around, there's nothing but indifference. Are you sure they can chat with you like a normal direction, and then are you going around this circle with you? Are you sure he's not teasing you? Then go back and find out if there is any. That little fox. Because after staying in this place for a long time, I always feel that everything is an illusion, even these. Can't believe it, and why if it's real, no matter what they say, they won't have any response to themselves. This situation is a little too strange. So at this moment, Aruma didn't want to believe that they were real at all, and that little fox might just be an illusion created by himself. One of the women in that place couldn't possibly have come here too. Chapter 1045, Traces. So the truth has been revealed in an instant, because this place will have a certain illusion. If you guessed correctly, it must be because of this reason. At this time, Lanying suddenly ran back from there in a hurry, with a relaxed look on his face. He couldn't tell that he should have been hit by a huge shock, but he couldn't understand that this place itself was an illusory place. Where can we find that little fox? After a while, it is estimated that these foxes will dissipate. Unexpectedly, the huge village was maintained by a fantasy, but whether the sculpture is still there, Aruma was entangled in this matter, but because of the one outside the cave. The sound of footsteps did not dare to go out to see. Do you want to see the previous sculpture because he told me about it just now? It seems that what he said is true, it's just a little fox that doesn't exist talking to me. But the news he revealed was very real. He said that the place is dominated by all illusions, and if one day that thing disappears, this place will collapse with it. As expected, the two of them covered each other like this, evacuated from this place and went out to take a look, and found that the sculpture in the center of the small square had long since disappeared. It can even be said that when he came in with Gong Yi just now, he also found that the sculpture stood there intact. How long has it been? Is it because of those? The exposure of the illusion also made it all become, is it different? And when Aruma looked at this place, there was a bit more complicated expression in her eyes. If you guessed correctly, this place should really be a fantasy scene. After all, the one in the middle. The disappearance of the sculpture disappeared. Contact Lan Ying again. I just said that I got the news from the little fox, and I don't know who entrusted this news to him, but at present, without confirming everything, Aruma still dare not to do something in vain, in case those inside the little foxes really came out of this hole by themselves. Then I looked at that sculpture again, and when I studied everything and understood that the real initiator might go and kill all those little foxes. Once Gong Yi thinks that he did it by himself, it will be difficult to handle, but just join the pirate group. There are some things that are not clear, and Ah does not want to do some provocation, or cause disputes between them and estrangement. You said that if you go out at this time, will you expose your location, or say it will give you trouble? The little fox caused trouble, and this is what I can't let go of. Once Gong Yi comes back, he thinks that the two of us have made everything terrible, then there will be troubles, and it is not something that the two of us should be responsible for, so why bother? Maybe it's the two of us who are unlucky in the end. After hearing this, Lan Ying nodded, and I hoped that Aruma would go out from this place. At this time, Aruma also complied with his wishes. Anyway, the two of them are teammates in this place. In Gong it's the best plan not to act rashly before Yi and Mayor come back, otherwise things won't end at that time. I can't fill this hole with my own, and it's hard to do some things at this moment. Just like in the current situation, I can't say let myself go through all the things and find one. Disadvantages, that may be considered a difficulty. And it is mainly where Gong Yi is now. If he can reach this place soon, then no matter what Aruma does, someone will keep it. After all, everyone has seen the ability of the captain. The reason why he joined this the band of thieves is precisely because of the existence of Gong Yi. No matter what kind of troubles, big or small, as long as he has him, they can basically be solved. He is fully integrated, and it can even be said that there are no problems at all, and it is the ability that he sees that he is slowly pulled in this pirate group, but at the same time because he has no fixed place to live, he can provide himself with what he wants most, and Lan Ying and the others can also give Alma a care, which should be regarded as the best ending. Well, every time there is a big problem on Bobo's side, he is accompanying him for everything. This time there is a problem on the Sea Fox's side, and he has to help no matter what. So Aruma has also determined what she wants to do, and this time, there must be a big problem on the mother-in-law's side, and it is not to the extent that it is today. At the same time, there is one thing that makes Aruma very puzzled. This fog has become getting bigger and bigger. It can be said that it will cover their place soon. Is it someone who is manipulating this fog behind the scenes? Chapter 1046. Cover 3rd. Otherwise, who else can do such a thing, or ask from another angle why the fog spreads faster and faster, and even covers an area larger and larger? If there is no reason, then I will never believe it. And there are also some things in this corner. Burst out slowly, instead of waiting for Gong Yi in this place, it's better to take action in advance. Anyway, it's just the difference between business investment and investment. Once some good things really happen, there will be some room for turning around, but if you continue to wait in this place, it is very likely that some other problems will occur, and then it will be so without hesitation, for the people in front of me. In fact, what Aruma has done is a little more cherished. After all, she is a companion who has accompanied him for so long, and Lan Ying has also done something very worrying. He is also very serious about himself. After all, they are all companions. Where did they come from? I don't pay attention to it, so at this moment, it is also tentative for Gong Yi. I hope to be able to put everything zoom in on the details, and then help him get out of that Uzumaki. After all, some things are his own fault. If it wasn't for the fact that he was too entangled in those things, he wouldn't have been injured the first time he participated in this event, which led to Aruma being won by others for a while. It was because of his previous influence, but Gong Yi discussed it with himself a few days ago. It turned out that he saw Lan Ying's father's existence in that cell, and those naval admirals were definitely the ones who couldn't keep the 4 emperor thieves. So I still hope that I can find a chance to tell Dae Young about these things, and then let him decide whether to go back with his father or continue to float on the sea with them. If it is the second choice, then Gong Yi and Aruma are naturally very happy, but Aruma has not found the opportunity to ask Lan Ying recently, and the silent atmosphere between the two seems to be a good opportunity at this time. So Aruma asked about Lan Ying, but he didn't know much about his father, and he wasn't even as good as the previous one. And he knew. So at this moment he actually wanted to go back with his father, but his father didn't seem to want to let him go. After all, that was the only one in the family, and his father took Lan Ying back to do some other things. And what should be done? After all, it is not difficult to see that Lan Ying is a very special person. Moreover, Gong Yi had been in Ruma all the time before, and asked him to ask Lan Ying's real thoughts. After all, in such a situation, if you don't get to the bottom of it, some of the things you do in the end may be deviated from the direction. And at this time, Gong Yi didn't want to make things so stiff. They are all in the same pirate group, and it is an earlier crew member than Aluma, and he doesn't want to make things so stiff. If he doesn't want to go back, he can go with these gentlemen continuing to float on the sea. I will not refuse him. I don't know how things will end. Who also looked at Lan Ying's expression, thinking that she would show some unwillingness or that her privacy was being spied on, but she only saw that he was still a female man. Aruma felt a little distressed. But Bobo's affairs are ahead of him, so he must rescue Bobo from that place first, and now he can only pin this hope on Gong Yi and Mayer, hoping that the two of them can. It was more reliable, so Aruma took Lan Ying out of this cave and went outside. After all, if all this is an illusion, then the white smoke should dissipate soon, but I have to say that it was a miserable situation outside. When Aruma came with Lan Ying, he found that he had seen it wasn't a scene at all. The bodies of the little foxes lying on the ground all disappeared without a trace. There were only pools of blood on the ground, and one after another smoking houses. They felt as if they had been scorched long ago. Such a place was discovered after many years, and it felt like everything was in such a situation. So at this moment, Aruma suddenly thought of something, and ran back to the cave quickly, while Lan Ying was out of breath chasing after, until she actually ran into the cave, only to find out Aruma was guarding a pile of smoke, not knowing what she was doing. At this time, the blue cherry blossom period can be clearly understood, and he quickly asked Aruma what happened just now. At this time, Aruma gave her a puzzled look, as if she did not expect that she would ask such a topic. Chapter 1047, Smoke. Do you think this thing is easy? If it is possible, the more hope should not be to stay away from them. It does not bring any particularly good habits, let alone if you really want to give some conditions. Why did you choose the right one in the first place? My own daughter did such a thing. After hearing this, Aruma couldn't help but be silent for a while, originally thinking that his way of thinking was like this, and originally thought that he felt a little guilty in his heart, and that forcing people to stay would not give the other party a bad impression, and now it seems that Gong Yi and himself are nothing more than members of the pirates. If the girls are forced to stay, it may cause troubles to others, so I am hesitant at this moment, but now I realize that the contradiction between them is not a day or two. It can even be said that this little trouble should not be solved immediately. And for Gong Yi, I hope that everything can develop into a good state, although sometimes some things are not so perfect, but there is no way. No one can really make everyone's emotions celebrate the new year. You can only do things within the scope of what you really want to consider. Just like Aruma today, she doesn't want to hurt Lan Ying anyway, but the rest of the people are not necessarily. After all, there are some things that you can't decide. If there will be an opportunity one day, then it must be Gong Yi who is more suitable to say this, but it is also he who told himself that the baby boy's father saw such news about him, and he also heard about the 4 emperor thieves before. What is the state of the person? If you guessed correctly, if you really let that man catch Lan Ying, then I'm afraid it will be impossible to escape. If you want to sell it, it will be another situation. I can't tolerate such a girl in front of me. Spoiled by this. Similarly, Gong Yi was still hanging around with that illusory place at this time, and I have to say that the impression of the man in black had already given him a big impact, but it was like this from the beginning to the end. It can be said, the little foxes don't have any problems, there is no mistake at all, the real mistake is the man in black. He disregarded everyone's obstacles and broke everything in this place. Not that what's the problem, it's just that he delayed the others. He has caused all kinds of troubles to the little foxes in this place, and even repaired others. The tracks of the Chinmo traffic have been destroyed, but the little foxes here are still putting up with him. Just because it's just a guest, no one will feel impatient with it. Even when he said that he hoped to bring some other people in, those little foxes didn't resist, just agreed in a daze. It's just that the village chief's expression became richer and richer. At this time, Gong Yi thought of the expression of the village chief looking at him before, and suddenly understood that he probably regarded this same face as a person. Let's do it. And at this moment, for Gong Yi, I hope to see the rest of the plot, but as expected, at the last moment, the twist turns. Originally this person has completely integrated into the living environment of this little fox. But until one day a group of people suddenly rushed into this place with a weapon. It seems that they should be people from other places. All of them are wearing gas masks, as if to prevent these. The fox's attack is the same, but I still don't know that the little fox will attack in a collective way. Of course, I didn't provoke them from the beginning. Where would I see such a scene? But for a moment the little fox's body exuded a yuhi-colored gas, and it didn't seem like a friendly thing. But at least it is based on the premise that they rush in. If you want to do something steadily, the negotiation will be fine. Why should you suddenly rush in? The little fox also became very alert in an instant. I have to say that it is good to have such an ability, but at the same time, a layer of mist rose up from his body, as if someone controlled his body. At this moment, that gas was suddenly taken away, as if it was like the bones of a professional person taking care of the family, and it was suddenly taken out. There was absolutely no reason to resist, or even a method, but at the same time, for Gong Yi, I hope to see some other changes. But at present, there is no such effect, let alone others, but at the same time, there are some things that make Gong Yi puzzled. If he can decide, he must hope that everything can develop to a normal state. Chapter 1048, Memories of the Men in Black. But now it seems that it is not very good, but at the same time, the image of the man in black has been enlarged to infinity again. It can be said that he should be entangled in something in this place, whether to go out to save people, or in this place alone and alone awaiting their death. After all, the results obtained between the two are different. If you really rush out to save people, then you will definitely be within their scope, and it will be nothing to mess around in this place in the future. And you can rely on the feng shui treasure of this place to make a fortune, and the village chief will slowly accept himself. But this man in black was just imagining everything. He didn't huddle in the corner without making a move and didn't say a word. He just silently watched the men in black pass through the crowd of little foxes. But said nothing. But at the same time, Gong Yi also felt a little heartache because of such a move. No one but him in this place could fight against the group of people in black, but he chose to remain silent, no longer for those. The fox fights for anything, which indeed makes Gong Yi a bit heartbroken, but there is nothing he can do. I was just a bystander. When I really wanted to stretch out my hand, I found that my body could move. It turned out that the man really stretched out his hand, but he only saved a few little foxes. But at this time, the eyes of the village chief were obviously a little bit of starlight. It seems that this child is definitely not him. It should not be all planned by him, but then who can put these human beings in? But why? Everything is not far beyond his budget, although the village chief's vision is not formal, but it is true, there is something in front of him. This person would definitely not be the work of the man in black. Gong Yi also breathed a sigh of relief at this time. It seems that the big villain is not going to be particularly thorough. So who is the man in black in front of him? Besides, I really can't think of any human rights. After all, I don't have a thorough understanding of the history of the little fox, but I only have a general understanding of the village chief and his previous enemy, including the later. Who made the scene in the village? The sculpture above must have a certain originality, but I didn't expect this to happen so quickly, and I didn't think there would be any connection between them. The only thing I thought of was how can I express all this in my heart. Had a great influence on Gong Yi at this moment, not to mention other things, only to say that this man in black did some things that some people didn't quite understand. Because right after the man made his move, the men in black quickly surrounded him, as if they were going to vomit him, but at the same time, Gong Yi couldn't understand why the men in black just took him away and went to leaving all the little foxes behind, except that has been killed. The rest are nothing but ethereal. And at this moment, Gong Yi wanted to see the true face of this person, but found that this person was wearing a huge hat kabuto, and the person being manipulated did not look up at this time. To this point, the memory suddenly came to an abrupt end, and what followed was nothing but a blank layer. At this time, the man in black who had just kidnapped him jumped out of the gap next to her, and followed her. It was the previous light. Did he return to that cave again? Then why is Meyer not here? He didn't say anything but handed him another jade card, as if to signal that he was going to watch the next video, but in this case, Gong Yi still put the jade card in kabuto first, and he wanted to know more about this black card. What does the man in clothes come for? And what is the reason for those scenes that make people feel very angry? If it is done by someone in his own body, then there is really some anger. How can you do this to him? But if you say that it was a play he directed and acted, so there was no need to waste time with him to continue watching it. Seriously, as long as you watch this video, you will understand what the scene that appeared outside the village was like, and the reason will soon become clear, but only if you have patience to take this thing. I read it from start to finish, and I'm sure I'm not wrong. It's okay if you don't believe it, anyway. It doesn't have any impact on me, but you must know this. The choice of life and death for the little fox is in your hands. If you watch them change their voices, if you don't watching them suffocate, the choice between this is not. I made it alone. Chapter 1049. Choice. After hearing this sentence, I couldn't help but make the internet a little angry. Why didn't he do it? Besides him, who else in black can live in this place? Until his appearance destroyed all the unknowns, making him unable to continue the rest of the things now. I don't even know how to deal with this person. It's like a strange person suddenly appeared in front of me, but I still watched this video, and I have to say that the man in black seems to be talking. It's true, at least in the current situation it didn't deceive itself. What this video tells is the real reason for some inexplicable things before. It turned out that the person who manipulated this body was just a spy sent to this place from the beginning, but since such a rebellious act later, he was taken back, and the little fox finally died like this. And at this moment, Gong Yi was a little overwhelmed. Those little foxes just fell in front of him one after another, and they didn't even have any ability to resist. The end, only the village chief led the remaining little foxes who took refuge to survive, and they should be the ones who were now blocked in the cave. However, in the next instant, a fire suddenly burned into the cave. Just before everyone could react, the little foxes had already seen that this hole was slowly sealed by the fire, and no little fox could escape from that place. This is Gong Yi's backside, and a cold sweat can't help it. So who are the people in front of Bobo? Can he know those? The little fox is not real, only a few of them can't see it, or is it because of the sculptures to protect the image of those little foxes, but in fact they have long since disappeared without a trace. It should have dissipated long ago, but after all, the situation has not improved, let alone what happened to Luo Zipping's side. If he has a way to explain these things, then he will have his father and uncle to explain to him, but if not, he can't explain to him the home he tried so hard to find, and he found this place because of such a dangerous opportunity. It's far from just a fantasy. After all, he is an architect. If it is possible to restore all this, it should be very simple, as long as the sculpture is built again. So after getting the truth, Gong Yi wanted to get out quickly, but he couldn't get out of this place in a short time, but he was still struggling. No matter what, he had to be responsible for this matter. And once Luo Zipping can really be found, as long as the sculpture is restored, the rest is just a matter on the surface. So at this moment Gong Yi is also fighting for peace with the Black Clothes negotiate. The other party admits that as long as he promises to return to this place, then everything can be negotiated. But he must carry this jade card with him, otherwise when something comes to his door, he won't be able to deal with it, and Gong Yi didn't take it too seriously at that time. It wasn't until later that an accidental incident made him believe it even more. What the man in black said, he was definitely not deceiving himself, it was just whether he wanted to believe it or not. And at this moment, Bobo's side was also dealt with, and he appeared in front of him at the same time. It felt like the man in black would release the ban on Bobo when he wanted to let him go. At this time, Bobo he was sweating profusely and looked like he was being used. At this time, he still whispered to himself that it was because his strength was too weak before, so when he took advantage of this time to train him after his transformation, Gong Yi naturally would not refuse. So the road was considered with another layer of protection. After all, if it is only based on human attacks, there may be some problems. It seems that these men in black must not be ordinary people, at least it is not that easy to be defeated, so at the same time it is also a shock to Gong Yi, and he must improve his strength as soon as possible. But at the same time, as the captain of the pirate group, he must also rush forward with everyone. First of all, Mayor on the observation deck must have a strong physique, but now he has the ability to observe things in the dark. Has become stronger and stronger. I have to say that the observation deck should be a good place to train people, otherwise how could he have reached such a height? But at the same time, Gong Yi is a little bit unbelievable. Why wait until the two of them are together at this time, and then go back? Saw Mayor. Chapter 1050, Destruction. 3rd. So whether this place is real or not, is it inside the cave or outside? Otherwise, how could all of this happen to such an extent? At this time, the man in black has disappeared, and no one has come to explain to himself how to do it. Returning to the previous cave, a few people were spinning around in this place. At this time, Bobo could simply speak a few words and communicate normally without any problems. He is also trying to describe the topography of this place. But there is also one point that makes him not quite understand. If he continues to carry out activities in such a situation, then who should he believe and who should he believe? To believe what the village chief said, you should still believe some of the pictures you have seen, they are just illusory. It seems that they only need to see if they have shadows under the sun. Shadows are enough. When the statue was maintained in the village, they all had specific bodies, including even shadows. After a while, but at this time, the mist shrouded me and I couldn't see clearly. But I have to say that this place makes people very suspicious. I really don't understand why, but at the same time, for me, it may be a successful breakthrough point. It only takes time, and at the same time for Illuma for the most part, I hope to find that the place where the sculpture is located. The matter of this place, this is the only breakthrough point. If you can find that sculpture, the rest of the things can be easily broken. Of course, if the ice is broken, some other methods are needed to solve it. Speaking of this place and that, where did the sculpture go? It always feels a little weird, but it's not about other issues, it's just that there are some things that make people feel bizarre. If there is a plan, then do you think we should look for the sculpture first, or should we look for Gong Yi's whereabouts first? Lan Ying hesitated for a while and then chose to look for Gong Yi first. Unexpectedly, there would be some differences between the two people. Aruma believes that this place is the real source. If Gong Yi is found but no sculpture is found, things will still happen over and over again. But if you really find a sculpture, it will be different. It is enough to maintain a status quo in a short period of time, and then let everything develop to a level that belongs to the original. Although some may be different, there is no way let's dictate the development of the mind in all things. And at the same time, Gong Yi also discovered another point. It turned out that while he and Mayer were trapped in this place, the world around the outside was not changing, as if it was a constant movement of him. Like insects. But at this time, Mayer was not flustered, not even dazed at all. He felt that he was prepared to do everything. He was not like himself, he only knew that he was wandering aimlessly in this place, but at the same time, there was one point. Beyond Gong Yi's budget, he didn't expect that light would become the direction to guide them out. At this time, that light was refracted on the ground, and Bobo, who had turned into a human shape, suddenly seemed to be under human control, and walked over there without stopping. For Gong Yi, this was natural. Is an unknown thing. But after all, for the sake of life safety, he had to follow Bobo quickly, and then called Mayer behind him. At first, Mayer was not aware of the surrounding road conditions. So I don't plan to follow Bobo's footsteps, but I don't know why Gong Yi always feels that there is a person guiding him. As long as he follows Bobo, all problems can be solved. But I don't dare to be too firm in such a situation. After all, I have to know Bobo's side. If the judgment is wrong, there may be a series of changes in everything that follows, so at this moment I have to do everything guaranteed for human life. And the one next to him, Mayer, is entering the pirates for the first time, so he can't let him lose trust in himself on the first day, but at the same time, he has to find a way to get out of this cave. After all, it feels like such a nine-curved corridor. It seems that there are some places that make people feel strange and even gloomy. But that beam of light guides Bobo in one direction, which surprised me very much. I didn't expect it to have such an action, but after all, everything is unexpected. Only after getting used to all of this can you discover their true direction and where they will be arranged next. Are you sure this is the right way? Why do I feel like I've been there just now? Chapter 1051. Correct, first. After hearing this, Gong Yi didn't even think that it was true that Mayer was not teleported into that environment, so he should have been wandering outside for a long time, but he didn't know this. Such a source. But at the same time, Gong Yi was a little surprised. If we can deduce certain theories and what to do next, it would be a good thing, but we can't let Bobo go alone. Therefore, after much hesitation, the two still agreed. Planned to follow Bobo and continue to move forward, but at this time, Mayer also deliberately observed the surroundings. Although he said that he had no strength, he had a sword that was provided by a devil fruit after all. When the sword was sent out, it was in the small hole, the irradiated light is suddenly refracted out. At this time, Bobo seemed to wake up suddenly, took a deep breath and looked around, but found that the surrounding scenery was always backwards and backwards, as if there were some people who were surprised, but there was no way to resist. But this time Mayer obviously has some differences. I didn't expect such a thing to happen after my sword refracted the light. In order to confirm some of his own thoughts, Mayer deliberately put away the. When he arrived, he kept walking in that direction. After observing this scene, Mayer was really surprised, but immediately took out the sword. After all, Bobo seemed to have noticed it the moment he took the money back. Some people want the same reason as him to grab the right to control the body. They even rushed forward and wanted to eat Mayer. At this time, let's not say whether he is willing or not. As long as Gong Yi is in this place, he has to help him. His last line of defense. Why are you still in this place? Why don't you go and find Aruma and the others? After hearing this, Gong Yi and Mayer looked at each other and couldn't help laughing softly. How could they find them at this time? let's deal with the current situation first. So Gongyi asked roughly, Bobo a few question, I want to see if he can remember what happened just now. But I found that it was like my soul was being controlled. I knew the outside world, and I even felt that I was just suddenly transported to this place at that time. It was the perception of the outside world, and even Gongyi asked his questions. When answering, he looked at Gongyi like an idiot. It seems that this incident is really not easy. If I had known earlier that he was in such a situation, I would have been more targeted, but after all, it's not too late, but there are a few things that are a little annoying. And at the same time, Bobo has also pursued another ultimate. It has to be said that the little fox's nose is still very sensitive, and he quickly found a place where the exit is the same, but at this time, Mayer's sword all the way I didn't put it down, I don't know because of the magnetic field of the devil fruit. Or for some reason, anyway. Bobo hasn't reported anything so far, but after going out, after all, it's not normal to rush out with a sword. So, Mayer put away the sword, and at the moment when the sword disappeared, he did not expect that this Bobo started to suffer from the previous illness again, which made the two of them very distressed. Yi thinks that since he will be with her for the rest of his life, so at this moment, Gongyi still needs to find out the real reason, but at this time, Bobo doesn't cooperate with the investigation at all, as if he understands something by himself, but he doesn't want to talk to him. These two people just talked, but the same situation is very helpless. After all, it is impossible to force such a cute little fox to tell the truth. Or the point to say it or not. The main reason is that he really can't do it by forcing him. After a few people ran out of this place, they finally saw the ones arranged at the entrance of the cave. Survived. People have to say that this scene is still very shocking. Bobo then rushed over with a whimper. Of course that hobby is really 0 points and 0 people feel frightened, because at this moment Aruma was lying on the ground, that also fell to the side, the person's face was pale, as if he had lost a lot of blood, but the little foxes beside him also disappeared. At this time, Gongyi was puzzled, but he still went out to check them out for safety. The little fox was there and found that they had disappeared without a trace. Even if they died, shouldn't they leave some corpses behind? How could it be? It disappeared out of thin air, so it's more of a doubt for me. Chapter 1052. Have a heart. But someone as minded as Aruma would not be deceived by him at once, so what was the reason? Why did the two of them lie in this place? At this moment, in addition to choosing, Gongyi still planned to explore the surrounding situation first, so he asked Bobo, who was crying and crying, to check if there were any the figures and smells of his own clan. At this time, Bobo stood up and tried to summon his energy, but found that there was no trace around him, and even his breath was blocked. I don't know if it was because he was avoiding him or what, but could it be because of Aruma? Did you do something to hurt him? But that should stop him. There are really not many people like Lanying who think about the overall situation, and it's mainly because Aruma usually shows it. It's a stable state. And except the time on Hayata Island, I have never seen him lose his temper. This is simply an impossible thing. If it weren't for danger, Aruma would not have done that at all. Something that makes people feel very resistant, and he still has a sense of identity and can understand what to do and what not to do. But at this moment, it seems that everything has developed to a stage that makes him uncontrollable, but the man in black has lost contact with him, and he can't ask him about this island, but the only thing he knows, yes, this should be a very strange way. Otherwise, how could it be possible that the things that the fog controls people's hearts, all appeared one by one, and then dissipated, but I just don't know those. What kind of mind did the little fox have? If they are all normal, then naturally, he won't say much. But if from the beginning they were expected and planned to dig a trap for everyone, then Gongyi should really question which side of Bobo was. After all, under such circumstances, he could not believe any person, not even a teammate who has been together for a long time, can't. After all, he has to make plans for others. It can't be dragged into the water because of one person's mistake, but at this time, the grief-stricken expression on Bobo's face is definitely not fake. Those smells disappeared, and he collapsed to the ground. At this time, Lan Ying suddenly woke up slowly. Gong Yi quickly helped her up, and asked about the previous things. At this time, Lan Ying answered falteringly, as if she was afraid of something. He was caught by Gong Yi keenly. What was he afraid of, and why did he hesitate to do something? Could it be that someone secretly threatened him and told him not to say anything? If so, then you should really consider asking him. What kind of thing can bring it down to such a level? And when he was on the bed before, he was considered a little bully, and he was omnipotent. How could it fall to such a level? So while comforting her, Gong Yi is also actively trying to observe some of his reactions. If it is normal, he will continue to ask him related questions. If it is not normal, let him slow down for a while. After all, there are some things that are not in a hurry. Of the 4 emperor thieves, I don't know if Aruma has mentioned it to him. After all, this kind of thing is not. I have the final say. I need to consider all things, once he exposes it. Feelings of not wanting to leave with yourself. Then I still have to send him to that place first, otherwise it will be troublesome to wait for the admiral to find him, and I will not deliberately hold people down. After all, everyone has the premise of pursuing their own happiness. I just don't know if Lan Ying is willing to leave with her. After all, his father's side was really not at ease, but at this moment, Lan Ying suddenly said a few words in a daze, as if being manipulated to say, that is. Guiding I went to the cave entrance by myself. I don't know what is there, but Lan Ying always repeats that sentence, which makes Gong Yi very surprised. Desperation, he had to ask Mayor who was on the side to help watch the 2 people, but he went to the side of the cave, only to find that there was nothing there. But the moment he turned around, he found that those people were gone. Could this be framed up? One of his own tricks. But Gong Yi was calm and steady and didn't move, not even moving. I knew that another change would definitely happen in a while, but I just didn't know what it was. But at this moment, the man in black suddenly appeared in front of him and told himself about the history of this cave, including those. The foxes did not disappear, but were completely slaughtered long ago. Chapter 1053, Disappearing. The only remaining village chief also went with his fox fist a few years ago, but at this moment, Gong Yi was very emotional, but the man in black said another point that made people feel very surprised. He said that Luo Zipping can save the village, as long as the sculpture is repaired and undamaged again, then the village can return to its previous hot state, but Gong Yi doesn't know whether to do it or not, because this is totally a deception, even an unnecessary thing, so after much hesitation, Gong Yi decides. Silently, waiting for the person in black to introduce the next level, as expected, under the emotion that he didn't show that he really wanted to help, there was a second plan that he clearly told himself, that is watering this land with blood is the only way to regenerate these little foxes. But at this time, Gong Yi rang. No matter how small this place is, there is still a certain area. If you use your own blood to water this piece of land, you don't know when it will be handed over. And if it goes out, doesn't it mean that this land has no hope of surviving again? So at the same time, Gong Yi hesitated for a while, but the little fox next to him came out. And what he showed was a very active atmosphere, which made Gong Yi stunned for a moment. What kind of situation is this? Could it be that he has an illusion again? Why is this little fox so happy? Said that all this is just a place that he can't imagine, but in fact, they should have developed like this. After all, in such a position, Gong Yi did not dare to look at it at will, once it happened. For some other questions, is it possible that you need to make atonement for yourself? It's actually very simple. If you don't like Luo Zipping, you can choose yourself, and you don't need so much blood, at most. In your body half of it, and it won't take a measure of exchange blood. We will add blood supplements to you as quickly as possible, but I hope you can sympathize and help us. After all, we are desperate. If there is a chance to do other things, we will not come to this place to force you. Dedicating one's own blood is not such a wonderful thing in itself. After hearing this, Gong Yi naturally hesitated. He didn't expect him to say such a thing. Then he hesitated for a while, not knowing whether to do it or not. After all, there is a way to do this, and he will not be too much rejection, but it seems that the current situation, it is much better to find luo zipping. And in this trip, I also found another point, that is, when I played the video before, I saw the bracelet of the man in black. If I guessed correctly, it should be the last time I was on Hayata Island. The piece I saw above, if I can get that thing, it should be not far from the day I return to that world. But I have to discuss this matter with luo zipping. After all, the town has collapsed, and once I go back, I will face a lot of difficulties, and now my fruit is a copy of him. If you are the only one who infiltrated the island, it would be very convenient whether it was evacuation or other aspects. After all, on that small island, if Marshal Tucci really survived, then he and his abilities would be the same. Match and correspond. Then let's go to luo zipping first, hoping to help you restore such a sculpture, but at the same time, I also want to clarify this point. If she refuses, I will not force her to do such a thing, so I hope you can please understand. After all, he is also a person and not a tool. If you really want to force him to make such a choice, then I would rather die with you. After hearing this, the man in black on the opposite side chuckled lightly, and then waved his hand. Gong Yi just immediately jumping out of this world. Aruma, who was beside him, had already woken up, and she was still staring at herself blankly. But at this time Gong Yi was still standing there, so he looked forward and found a piece of Mukuro bone. He didn't expect those little foxes. They put the Mukuro bone in this place after death. It seems that the two of them must have been taken aback, otherwise how could there be such a sudden reaction? But at the same time, it also made me a little surprised. If it was really a catastrophe at that time, then who would bury them in this place? The man in black just now should be just a phantom, that is, left by you in this place. Chapter 1054. Role. But in fact he has no role, not even a threat. As long as he can successfully leave this island, there is no danger, but after all, he has accepted the request of others. How can he give up at will? What about? So after talking to them, Bobo was the first to do such a thing, of course. After all, this place is his hometown and can only be restored by him, and at the same time, he also hopes to dedicate a piece to his hometown. He told us that this time he saw his parents on the journey back and thought it was the truth. And he can also live a happy life, only to find that everything is just an illusory phantom, and all people have died like this many years ago. But Gong Yi just listened to the man in black. That tone should be able to prove that this wave has only appeared in the past 2 years, so who is still alive in this place, and where are their traces? Gong Yi is naturally at this time. I dare not say it out loud. So I had to keep implying that Bobo told him not to give up. Fortunately, the other party is still a relatively optimistic little fox. Under his own advice in a few words, he still decided to muster the courage to face the current life. Anyway, it is not difficult, it's just that there are some problems. Of course, apart from this question, what is more memorable is what is in front of you. After all, it is reasonable to go to luo zipping to restore the sculpture. It is reasonable, and generally speaking, he should also do it, but what does this sculpture look like? It's a difficult thing. No one in this place knows what the sculpture looks like, even the little fox can only give a rough idea. If you really want to repair it, at least you need to know an accurate pattern, so at this time a few people did not delay much, and went back to the boat. Only a few people found that Yu was actually on the boat. At this time, Gong Yi didn't. Yu smiled, and when he left, he asked him if he wanted to go to the island together, but he said, "Don't say there is any danger, it's easy to take care of him when he comes back." Now it seems that she should be half a prophet. Sure enough, he encountered some big problems. He didn't even think about it. He asked if he wanted to go back to find luo zipping, which made Gong Yi not. He was a little surprised. He might know what he was capable of. He was going to find luo zipping, but at the same time, he also said that in his heart, everyone was on his side, Gongyi did not hesitate, and directly ordered to arrive at Luozipping, a small island, and waited. After he went back, several people saw their existence and couldn't help but be surprised. Unexpectedly, they ran back from the old man once. At this time, Gongyi handed Luozipping aside and talked to her about the sculpture. At this time, Zipping had a difficult look on his face. After all, under the premise of not knowing what this thing really looks like, it is really difficult to restore it. But when I went to bed at night, a very strange event happened. The man in black came to this place to give Gongyi a dream, telling him what kind of structure it was and what kind of figure it was. The next morning, I will forget them, only to find that they are deeply engraved in my mind like a memory. This is naturally a good thing for Gongyi. He hurried to Luozipping's side and gave him a general description of what this thing looks like. Luozipping nodded in agreement, and then continued to draw the sketch. Came out. After handing it to Gongyi, Gongyi nodded quickly, and then passed it to a few people around. They all felt very much like before, that sculpture, especially Aruma. His reaction was the biggest, as if seeing that thing really appeared in front of him. His terrified eyes made Gongyi a little different. What was it that could give him such an impression? Although he was not a person with high abilities, he was at least a newcomer to the pirates. For a year, I have to ensure the safety of everyone and whether some of their thoughts are still normal. That's why Gongyi went to look for Aruma that night, and wanted to ask him what kind of situation he was in. After entering his house, he found a very strange thing. He was alone lying on the bed, and kept shaking, and even sweating constantly on his forehead. As if something had invaded his dream, Gongyi watched anxiously from the side, but he didn't dare to wake him up because he was afraid that if something went wrong, he couldn't handle it, so he had to watch it obediently. Looking at him, as expected, the moment Aruma sat up, she saw Gongyi at the head of the bed. She shivered in fright, but then she realized that he was a normal person. Chapter 1055. Silence. But this kind of visual impact is definitely not less. At that time, Gongyi deliberately wore a black dress. He didn't want to scare her, but he found out that this is really out of the calculation. It can be said that it is completely different. A point of. But at the same time, Gongyi also asked Gongyi to consider another point. If he couldn't solve everything by himself in such a situation, it must be a difficulty. But now it seems that his reaction is always a lot more abrupt than he thought. Could it be because of what happened before? If it is really because of this, then he has sinned too much, but at the same time, he also made Gongyi consider another factor. Maybe all the obstacles and challenges brought by this cave, I have to work hard to overcome it. Why are you having nightmares? I see that you are in a bad mood these 2 days. Is there something wrong? And the two of you seem to have seen something in that cave before. Why is he in a coma in that place? So he doesn't seem to know anything. I don't doubt that his brain is not smart, but you are different. You are the only normal person in our place. How is it possible? After hearing this, Aruma sat silent for a while at the head of the bed. Gongyi thought he couldn't ask anything, so he sighed and turned to leave. Who knows? At this time, he suddenly said a few words slowly. Words. There was a pile of Mukuro bones at the end of the cave. We too thought it was the real birthplace, so we stepped forward and took a look, but the impact was really big at that time. Because at that time, the replacement has not dissipated, we can see that memory. Some bones are slowly burning into ashes in the raging fire, but these bones are real one by one. Individuals can never say that all this is a lie. But in this process, Gongyi also seemed to be tortured mad by the two of them. After all, every day they dreamed a new environment would appear, until after Luozipping finished the sketch, a few people set off to sit down. The boat returned to that small island. At this time, the sharp-eyed mayor found that the boat had been razed to the ground, and no one knew why, but for safety and security, Gongyi quickly docked the boat in an inconspicuous little corner, and brought all the people with him. The little island that can't be reached. That there was a group of people wandering in a corner next to it, which made Gongyi bite Kiba and gnash his teeth after seeing the faces of those people. Place to come. After all, the ship has already stopped at this place. How can I not believe it is them? But at this moment, after the person's face has really turned around, Gong Yi is even more surprised. He didn't think of the blue Sakura's father. He actually found this place, but he was very surprised. It seems that the people of the 4 emperor thieves are indeed well deserved. From the Admiral of the Navy. Does it prove that such a group of people they are also searching for will cause a lot of trouble on a small island? It seems that he did not predict anything at all this time. But he also won't clean up the mess for him, but it can't be seen that Bobo really wants to go back from this place. Of hope revealed in his eyes, and he could not refuse him, so he had no choice but to ask Luo Zipping if he could repair such a sculpture indirectly. This is a completely impossible thing, not to mention how high his height is, and it is very difficult to recover from some other levels. But things always have to be done, so a few people rested in bed that night. The next morning, a few people were woken up by the sound of cannons. When they looked up again, that day, some squares in the small village including that long Jinchuriki column, which could have been repaired, but now it has all been razed to the ground. This means that if you really want to make those souls reappear, then there is no possibility other than to renovate this village, including rebuilding. At this time Bobo is like crazy. After the transformation, he originally spoke less often, probably because of the psychological impact. Therefore, there is less talk and less things to do, not to mention calling them at ordinary times. I feel that the obedient Bobo who used to lie in his arms has long since disappeared. During this period, Aruma was actually quite worried. The two of them went to bed from the very beginning. Good friends, until Aruma joined the real pirate group. Bobo was the happiest in his heart. Every time the two of them could be seen playing in that place, while Lan Ying was watching. Chapter 1056. Solution. Things are now completely out of control, but after all, since they have joined, they cannot be treated unequally, so at this moment Gong Yi still chose to take this matter into the bottle first, and then solve other things, but it makes people the thing that I feel regretful is. I actually met Lan Ying's father on this small island, and now it's a stalemate. So at this moment, Gong Yi quickly called Lan Ying back to the boat, did not let him down, and then float Aruma to guard him, but Aruma was eager to come out, so Gong Yi had to let Meyer accompany him. Lan Ying, in this case, a Liao Wang who wants to look at the tower can always observe the topography of this place clearly, and it will be easier to escape with Lan Ying at that time. So when he left, Gong Yi specifically asked Meyer a few words. No matter what happened, Lan Ying had to be evacuated first, but he refused to go back with his father, so there was no need to force her anymore. And Bobo was very depressed at this time. After finally finding his hometown, even if it is just a bunch of ethereal shadows, it is still much better than no hope at all, and he has successfully transformed himself during this journey. I was more happy. Just after Luo Zipping came back this trip, he found that the little fox was gone, although the replacement turned out to be a humanoid. This could not help but let him eat a bit, and he deliberately studied Bobo for a while, but later because of Aruma's forced objection, Luo Zipping did not continue to watch. But I didn't expect that this time I came back to help restore the sculpture of his hometown. However, since he landed on the island for so long, he hadn't seen any little foxes appear, which made Luo Zipping have some doubts. One day in the middle of the night, I suddenly secretly asked Gong Yi this question. Gong Yi sighed and said something about the sculpture before. Only when the sculpture is really repaired can everything go back to the past. In this way, Luo Zipping couldn't help but froze for a moment. Isn't this a self-deception performance? But after all, everyone is here, and it is not convenient for him to tell the truth, but he still told Gong Yi about it in private. But Gong Yi, there is no way. I finally found my hometown for Bobo. I can't tell me to throw it away. And now it seems that the situation does not allow myself to be optimistic, and if there is room for everything to turn around, either now or now, of course, Gong Yi is still lurking under Lan Ying's father's hands, wanting to find out about their little old man. This is a character similar to an old man, who suddenly pulled himself into one. What can I say and can't say on this small island? It's nothing more than After warning myself not to mention something like that, their captain will go crazy, Gang Yi realized that it seems that Lan Ying's father doesn't dislike it. He just wanted to use him to do something. After all, some things cannot always be seen on the surface, so at this moment Gang Yi does not intend to believe him, nor does he intend to let him go. But at the same time, when he went back and reported the news to the two people, Aruma and Bobo made different choices. Aruma hoped to catch the person first and then talk about it, but Bobo hoped to live in the sculpture first, and then put all the everything as back to normal. Actually, we should get rid of that person first. After all, your sculpture problem really needs to be improved, but you also need to understand that they used cannons to raise this place to the ground before going upstairs. If you repair the sculpture first, you may face greater risks, and it is not certain whether you can bring Luo Zipping back alive at that time. After hearing this, Bobo was silent for a while and then turned his head. He didn't speak again in the past, which made Gang Yi slightly different. It was easy to compromise so quickly. It seems that this is not like the one I once knew. Bobo, but at the same time I also let myself understand a truth. Sometimes things are like this, and I always feel that there is no way to solve everything. Between the twists and turns, another passage will be found, but Aruma has no opinion at all at this time, and instructed to step aside to persuade Bobo to comfort her a little bit. After all, she is also responsible for such a thing. If it is not because of herself, if he didn't, how could things have become like this? But you also have to understand the truth. If you hadn't brought Bobo on this ship, it wouldn't have fallen to the level it is today. And if she hadn't insisted on settling on this small island, she wouldn't have let Bobo discover his clan, let alone let her experience such a cruel truth. After all, after living with this family for a period of time. Chapter 1057, Destroy. Accidentally discovered that they are not human anymore. They are all things destroyed the Phantom, who can understand and accept such a thing. So at this moment, Bobo's sadness is also in Aruma magnified infinitely. After all, the two were good friends before, but when they woke up, they were more inclined to talk to Aruma. But since this happened, even Aruma is reluctant to communicate. After all, she was the only one who couldn't laugh at her accent before, let alone stumbling like me, but for Aruma, it is also a memory. When I was a child, I stuttered a little bit like the same, but my mother never despised me, and even kept teaching me how to speak, until one day he was killed by a pirate, which made me want to join the pirate group after I was born. Although they all traveled at sea, the pirates are obviously much more refined than the pirates. Compared with what they have done, people feel that there is still a bit of admiration, but I also didn't expect that from before to now, there is no concept for pirates. You mean that everyone on Aruma has been in the past few days? When I was thinking about it, I specifically told him about this situation. But when he returned to Rohippan, he stopped talking, as if Aruma had always dreamed of something related to the island. But what can I do then? Aruma doesn't want to think about it, but when he had walked to the corner of the cave, he did see some beautiful images of nothingness, and he was very shocked. After all, the things that have been burned are still the same as before. Could it be that do the Sea Fox clan have any other special abilities? But under such circumstances, Gang Yi was not discouraged, but was always looking for a solution. There is always one that can be doubled. But now, Lan Ying's father must be taken down, otherwise when all the people from the 4 Emperor Thieves gather in this place, not to mention wanting to escape, even if they want to leave will be a problem. Prepare everything I need in this place as quickly as possible, and then clear them from this island, but you know that this may be. Luo Zipping is needed to do such a thing. After all, in this group, except him, no one is the most concerned about this aspect, so it is always after the place of Luo Zipping these 2 days. I hope he can promise to stay in this place for a period of time. The same Shuru also came here with his brother. At this time, Luo Zipping replied, it was actually quite difficult for them to lay the foundation in that place before, and it would be a good idea to try again in another place, but I don't know what Shiliu and her brother thought. In the future, the other party was very easy to talk to, and promised to come down and plan to take root in this place. But he was going to negotiate with those people, but found that no one could say. This is because his heart still has some fluctuations. After all, when he wanted to discuss, he found that there was no one around who could do such a thing. Don't think about it. We have backed you up for these things, and when the time comes, you can help you restore the village. There is nothing that can't be overcome, and we should solve this matter as it should be. And some of them are not what I said about you. You have to try to draw them out of this shadow. You look like Lan Ying. When Auntie died before, didn't he also look generous and sacrificed? Isn't it right now? Eat and drink. Although it is said that he can't speak when he is not transformed, his perception of the outside world is still very strong. So Gong Yi said that this matter was actually silent for a while, but thinking about him and his father coming to him. So I have everything, and I don't want to pay attention to Gong Yi in front of me. At this time, Gong Yi actually probably guessed what he was thinking, but this situation was not a good thing for Lan Ying, so Gong Yi sighed and told the real situation. Actually, it's not what you think. That man approached her just to make a deal with it. The person you thought disappeared for so long for no reason will suddenly appear in front of you and be courteous to you. It's not possible at all, because his mother died, causing Lan Ying's last barrier to disappear, so the man planned to bring the people from the 4 Emperor Pirates to Naing to make some deals. Is nothing more than selling his daughter. I have never seen such a cruel father, and I dare not tell Lan Ying about this. After all, I heard it in a bar by accident. After hearing this, I was stunned. Chapter 1058. Concealing. Is it true what you said? It seems that her father should be pretty good to her. Since they have already chased down this island, are you sure it's just to make a deal for Lan Ying? Gong Yi nodded. This is the news he heard in the bar. You must know those. The people in the tavern are always talking about things. They will not pretend to be false, so for me, I just need to listen to them quietly, because nothing will deceive me. And they are not so necessary. After all, everything from the beginning to the end has a reason. If a certain department, he has some things changed, then it must be because of some other starting points. So Gong Yi, who did not hesitate at this moment, still intends to clarify this matter with Bobo. After listening to it, there is no reaction except silence. After all, something like this is a shock to anyone. If you want to become better, then it is a good development, but if it is just a feeling of meeting by chance, I am afraid it is not necessary, but Lan Ying will definitely protect it. After all, he was the first crew member of his own place, and only later did he recruit the next few people, including the Watchtower's garrison, who was recruited by Meyer. Therefore, Gong Yi is very grateful to Lan Ying, so he hopes to protect his everything. Only in this way is the best balance point for himself, which is neither biased towards anyone nor I will treat anyone badly, and since I feel that I am not good to her, I might as well tell these things. If he wishes to have such a father with such a family, then he has no opinion at all, after hearing the impact of this fact. In fact, no one thought that Lan Ying hid in a small corner and listened to their conversation. Although he said that he didn't hear anything important, it was shocking enough to hear his father on this small island. After her mother died, she even came to find herself again, and even sold herself in the gang of thieves. You must know that when she was looking for him back then, she refused, until a man suddenly fell in love with her, and every time she saw her, she was right. It's a bit boring, especially. There was no way to solve these things, and in desperation, I had to ask Gong Yi for help, and then followed him out. Joined the pirates, and later I gradually had a large number of teammates, but at that time, my father really made me feel very scary, but after many days, I didn't hear the news of the 4 emperor thieves and someone coming, so saying this makes me suspect, he must have been kicked out of the team because he was arrested by the admiral. I guess no one will come to support Lan Ying's father in the future. If you want to make a big vote, you can solve it now. Just disappear from this island and never come back, and sign an agreement. If we tell him not to come near here in his life, then after we leave, Luo Zipping and Shi Lu can be considered guaranteed. After hearing this, Luo Zipping, Shi Lu, and Shi Lu's brother were actually shocked. He didn't expect that the first good thing Gong Yi thought was about them. Of course, Luo Zipping and Gong Yi promised that as long as he could live on such a small island where his younger brother was not bad, Gong Yi that the sculpture would help her repair it, also agreed with satisfaction. I discussed with Aluma and Mayer how to deal with Lan Ying's father. From the beginning to the end, Gong Yi never mentioned to Lan Ying that his father was on this island. Lan Ying also waited for him to speak, but neither of the two sides said anything, let alone what the other party was thinking, but there was no way. If he could find something to understand, he would not have reached the level he is today. In that case, have you considered that if there are more people on his side than us, how should we solve it? As long as you take time out, the foundation in the center of the square has already been laid. This is what we did with our flashlights in the past 2 nights. Basically, we only need to delay for 2 or 3 days to put Lan Ying's father led into the woods, after entanglement for a while, after Luo Zipping repairs the sculpture, we will have reinforcements. In fact, I never told him, we have already planned to help him restore the sculpture. Chapter 1059, Surprise. At this time, he suddenly appeared outside his door, and the plate in his hand also shattered to the ground. At this time, Gong Yi turned around abruptly and found that she was standing behind and overheard his speech, so he looked at him helplessly. At a glance, at this time, he rushed up quickly and hugged Gong Yi's neck. He didn't expect him to do so. Thank you so much, I thought you never cared about it. I saw you 2 days without showing any signs or doing anything. I thought you had already forgotten about this matter. Today I'm here to say goodbye to you guys, and if I don't take some measures, I might be alone with a small shovel to restore the sculptures in the square. Hearing this, a few people were discussing it here, and the elders couldn't help laughing. After all, they didn't expect to be so cute, but who did not do the same thing that promised him? And this time Luo Zipping also showed that I will do my best to use the best materials to create a suitable sculpture. After all, this place is indeed a little weird. According to some modern judgments, the feng shui of this place is undoubtedly very strange. That the sculpture is just right there. It can absorb all the yin on the island and balance the yin and yang. And he can also bear a part of the destructive power. If the father of Lan Ying didn't go up, he didn't take these. When the cannonball attacked, his sculpture hadn't fallen down, then basically it could be used as a protective barrier. In a short period of time, those people will not want to break through this small island, let alone destroy it to what it is today. In fact, after seeing this swordsmanship, Luo Zipping was also amazed. If he said such a thing, if he kept it until now, he would definitely pay attention to it. Now it seems that it is a pity. Don't worry, we have already made such a move. As long as we lead it into the old forest in the deep mountains for a period of time, then basically we can let Luo Zipping repair the sculpture. When the reinforcements are in place, we are ready to start a complete war. Just this time, I also asked Daruma to ask Lan Ying from the side. She doesn't want to go back with that man, so we don't have to force him. Anyway, in the end, the matter is okay, and there is always a solution. But at the same time, we must understand a truth, we are not robbed. We must treat all things with fairness, so we must consider 3 points before doing things. After hearing this, several people around him started to nod, and of course Shilu was no exception. I didn't expect him to join this fight. It was said that it was because she was the only girl who looked more like Lan Ying. So he tried his best to make himself more similar. Then he took the initiative to take such a name, and it should be outside of this action, and he was not budgeted in it at all, so there must be a girl to play it. After all, it is impossible to take one dewy big gentleman to act as. Fortunately, he took the initiative to stand up. But at the same time, Lan Ying actually wanted to go by herself. After all, it's not good to bother others with such a thing, but it's not good for you to pretend to know. After all, everyone is planning everything to hide themselves. If you suddenly say that you understand everything and that Akatsuki knows everything, then it will be a little shocking. So while making the plan, a few people turned on the lights to do this kind of thing late at night. Lan Ying got up and went to the bathroom halfway. Seeing that place was brightly lit, I couldn't help but feel a little more sad. Everyone was worried about this. I tried so hard to do something, I couldn't say anything more. So at the same time, Gong Yi was asked to consider another point. If it was time to leave, he couldn't leave no one on the boat, then Lan Ying would definitely be puzzled, so he decided to leave Mayor here first. When the time comes, I will take you to the front of their camp first. Those people will definitely stop and observe when they see a girl. You don't need to move very slowly, you must pretend to be panicked. Look like. In the middle, we tie a rope to our hands. I will pull you up as quickly as possible, and we will continue to run forward. After all, I must ensure your safety. There will be muskets, so you have to be prepared to be safe. After hearing this, Yu slowly took out a spare body armor from his room, and put it on Shilu's body lightly. At this time, Shilu's brother couldn't help but squinted at her. It seems that he is not satisfied with his hands-on action game, but he doesn't know how to wear this bulletproof vest, so in desperation, he can only watch him put it on Shuru. Chapter 1060, Hometown. A few people next to them couldn't help but look funny when they saw this scene. They didn't expect that they would be jealous because of this. They didn't expect that Shilu's brother was really a sister-in-law. In fact, at this time, Lan Ying's eye was quite happy for him. After all, it is a good thing to have such a good brother. Everyone hopes to have such a brother, but in fact, there are very few who can really have it. After all, this is a rare resource. Same time, it also made Gong Yi think of a point. If it comes time to let the two of them play a brother-sister friendship, can Lan Ying's father stay for a while? After all, Shilu's figure is quite like Lan Sakura's, it shouldn't be a big problem to play in her true colors at that time. It only needs to make him wonder for a while. After all, the building must be restored first, otherwise it is completely impossible to defeat him with their numbers. This belongs to Bobo's hometown, and a few people must fight for it once. Of course, there are prerequisites for such a thing. It's absolutely impossible to take any action blindly, otherwise it will be a very difficult problem to end, so at this moment it is obvious that something has already happened, but no one said it, but at this moment, all of the truth was revealed, no matter what the purpose was, but it also shocked Lan Ying. This bulletproof vest really feels safe to wear. At this time, Yukai slowly talked about the origin of my bulletproof vest. Anyway, I didn't understand the specifics, but I couldn't tell what he thought of this bulletproof vest. He is still very proud of his clothes, it should be the piece of equipment he is most satisfied with. But at the same time, he also has another skill, unless he is a rather tasteless person, but he is the most useful person on this ship. After all, the chef is in charge of all this, but Meyer on the side has a handful of devil fruits to support the sword, but at the same time, the sword still wants to devour his blood after a period of time. So in fact, Shiryu doesn't really want to have such a skill, but Gong Yi is actually thinking about it. After all, Shiryu's brother can help him arrange everything, including the rest. All can be solved, but only this one thing can't be solved. After all, some things are not calculated. It turned out that in the process of this matter, there was a point. I was very surprised. After all, if this is true, then one person will not have any reactionary psychology. The problem is that this account must be put on their heads, so Gong Yi thought about it and planned to reveal a little bit of news to Lan Ying, but several people around didn't agree. Kind of soft-hearted. In fact, I have considered this point myself, but there is no other way. If I really don't tell him this way, then if something really goes wrong. He is an orphan with no support. Basically all the people on this ship are like this, so he is the only one who survived, so Gong Yi wants to cherish that. After all, he should be the only one people with relatives, but at this time, several people around them disagreed, as if they were afraid that Lan Ying's father would hurt him. In fact, there is a reason for such a thing. After all, there is a lesson from the past. Lan Ying was because of his mother. After the so-called aunt died, his father did not want to talk about this mess, so he was forced to join the band of thieves. But now he chooses to bring this daughter back, except that he has some other sexual things in mind, for Gong Yi and the others, they don't think they can trust that man, but Gong Yi is still carrying everyone and the blue behind his back. Sakura greeted her, but luckily Lan Ying didn't resist this time, she just said a few words in a dramatic way. I have to say that sometimes, he does things right and can find the clearest route in this complicated matter with the simplest idea. After Gong Yi listened to Lan Ying's words, he felt that he could go for a big job. After all, as his biological daughter, he had no extra thoughts. If the four emperors didn't come together, it would be very easy for him to start. But after all, some things still need to be referred to. After all, my own opinions cannot contain everyone's, but at the same time Lan Ying agreed and basically passed all the levels. Therefore, a few people made a plan that night to deal with Lan Ying's father. Although these things are beyond expectations, other places still need to be arranged in case there is no need for it at that time. At the same time, the other party did not expect that the 2 days were just constantly checking some buildings around this place.